And here we go, back to normal 94 by 50 podcast. I'm your host, Ilya Kurbanov, obviously joined by the notorious Moe Khan of Montreal's play by play and basketball analyst, working a little bit with the CFL as well, doing lots of great stuff in the sports industry out on the east side of this country while I'm here in BC in Vancouver. Moe Khan, I'm not going to speak a lot on you. I'll let you tell your story and I'll let you, share the insides and outs of what you are, who you are, what you do, and how you
Yeah.
doing, my friend?
I'm well, my man. I hope all is well on the West Coast. It's very cold here in Montreal.
Hey man, we had a freezing weekend. I don't want to go back to it to be honest. Calling a game and freezing cold, seeing those Manitoba players having parkas covering their legs. It's not the best feeling. But you know, let's start from the beginning. You got into calling. I remember the first time I met you. You were calling our games at Champlain College
Yeah.
Saint-Lambert out on the south shore of Montreal. But what prompted you to make that decision, and what got you into the play calling and the sports media in general, man?
Well, I've always had an appetite for sports when I was a kid, and growing up, I would listen to the radio, which is now a foreign concept in today's society, right? We have now phones and all that stuff, but it kind of grew my appetite in a sense that I can be a play-by-play guy or broadcaster in that element of the media world at the time. And I was lucky enough doing radio for TSN Montreal to kind of grow in there. And then one day, I was doing McGill football initially in 2012. And then 2013, Peter Yiannopoulos, who you know very well, who is a lead analyst for RDS's NBA coverage and one of the big voices in Montreal for Quebec basketball, had asked me to do play-by-play for the Nationals, for the CCAAs at John Abbott College. I said, sure, no problem. It was my first rodeo doing that level of sport. And I was terrible for like the first 20 games of that event, but I kind of found my rhythm afterwards, and that's where it kind of grew for me. And then someone like you and I both know very well, Vince Amato, who's the athletic director at Champlain College. The following year, surprisingly, had asked me to do the women's nationals that were being hosted on the South Shore. I said no problem, and that's where it kind of grew for me, where Champlain gave me my real shot along with McGill to do play-by-play in various sports, whether it was football, soccer, basketball, lacrosse, hockey included. And it's an art form because David Amber, who I know very well from Sportsnet and of course Hockey Night in Canada, said to me, "Look, when you apply for a bigger network, it has to be your best stuff. It can't be your second, third best quality. It's got to be cutting edge stuff when it comes down to it." And that really stood with me, right? Because you have to say to yourself that people walk in, "Oh, I want to do this right away." Well, no, it takes time to develop that art form and be where you want. So it's taken me years, and being at that level of sport of university and CCAA has allowed me to make my mistakes, figure it out, and kind of improve on that, and kind of grow and be a sponge and watch others do it. And I've been blessed to be part of TSN TV's coverage for the CFL in Montreal, to watch those guys do it, how they operate, and other NHL games as well. So for me, at the end of the day, Ilya, it's been a journey that I've learned a lot and be a sponge. But now where I'm at today, where I'm very lucky to be the play-by-play voice for the Montreal Lions for the CEBL, to be involved with CFL on TSN coverage, to be in the booth with those guys, to call the UTEC Bowl for U Sports and CBC was a big thing for me. To now calling regular season NCAA games that I did back in late November when they were in Montreal. It's been crazy, but I've been very lucky to be in this position that I'm at right now, and now mentoring those next generation of kids who want to be in that role, that I can be a broadcaster, podcaster, or play-by-play voice as well.
It's funny you say that, mentoring the new generation and the younger voices of today's, like, who are looking to join same, kind of area work field, joining the sports broadcasting industry, me being one of them. I remember late in August I called you like, hey, like, I know you're doing a bunch of things. How'd you get into it? What can I do? How can I get involved? And obviously now, having done a couple of years at Dalhousie and my former University of King's College Blue Devils, doing a little bit of play-by-play or color commentary, social media, sports writing, and all that stuff. But you know you say it's luck. I find you kind of create your own luck path because you work so hard. You said, the first 20 games over the same, you doing 20 games in the same event, and it's just constant reps. What are the some of the tips that you would, consider telling to the younger generation, those who are trying to break through, in terms of like how to work on your craft, what to look for, maybe something that they could pay attention even after they get on air, going back and maybe rewatching tape and so forth,
Right. So in that sense, I think the first thing, especially if you're covering like a school team, is to develop a rapport with the coaching staff and its players. Right. Asking the coaches, "Hey, can I come watch your practice because I need to better understand your team, your roster, for my prep work for the broadcast." And I think in Canada, unlike in the U.S., where kids grow up ingrained with collegiate sports, in Canada it's a bit different, right? So a lot of these coaches are kind of foreign to the idea, like, wait a minute, he or she wants to come watch my practice. Okay, cool, let them come watch it, right? And it better preps you because whether you watch a football practice, soccer practice, whatever it is, you're able to kind of figure players out. What's their style of play? Who are the best players? You get to talk to players, develop that connection, right? Because they'll be comfortable to kind of say, hey, like, you know what? This is how we feel about team A, B, C, and X, Y, and Z. But now we're getting ready for that game. So I think it's important to really establish that connection with the coaching staffs out there, and then studying those players. Like, look, reality is, I wasn't being paid to go watch practice, but I did it because that's the goal and that's the grind you have to do to get to that point. And once you get that, you obtain credit and the ability to say to those guys, "Hey, you can trust me with whatever you tell me." And that's where you develop the inside nuggets that you find from the teams about, "Hey, this is what's going on here." I mean, I won't say which team it was, but I called the football game not too long ago, and I was talking to the coach, and the coach said, "Hey, man, look, I'll be real with you, man. Off the record, like our quarterback's hurt, and he can't throw the football." And I said, "Okay, cool. I'll keep that in the back of my mind." So when I called that football game a couple of years ago, I knew he was banged up, and his throws were coming on like wobbly. And I said, "Hey, you know what? The guy is a little bit perhaps banged up. We don't know." And we all knew. I knew, right? So I think that's the key, is that you have to develop those connections, and you have to put in the grind to say, I'm gonna go watch a practice. It can be 6:45 in the morning, which I've done before for university programs, or it could be at 9 o'clock at night. You have to go do that, and that's how you get better prep for it. And people know, you can't show up with a laptop, open it up, pop off the rosters, and go. No, you have to understand what you're watching. Right? It's important to watch the film of that team or teams you'll be calling to get a gauge of who they are on the court, or on the ice, or on the field, whatever it is. So there's a lot of moving parts that come together, but it's almost like you're prepping for a week's worth of games here. So if the game's on Saturday, Monday you start laying down the foundation. Tuesday you put the heavy work in. Wednesday you do the final details, and Thursday, Friday is the final prep touches, all that stuff, and then by Saturday, Sunday you're ready to go. So there is a lot of prep time that goes into this environment, and some people aren't immune to doing it. They just want to show up and call a game. That doesn't work like that. You have to put in the time. And I think when it comes to when you call a game, it's more about how were you in that moment? Because a lot of people want to be Homer, hey, pro, whatever, UBC, pro McGill, pro U of T, whatever it is. Cool, but you need to know the opposing team as well. If you show an objective view in how you call a game, you get the respect of those teams who are watching, those family and friends who are watching the game. Say, hey, you know what? He or she's really good at what they do. They called it right down the middle. And if you can call it down the middle, you gain more rapport, not rapport, but more gain of the respect that you get from others, saying, hey, this person can be hard because we know that they're going to call a straight game and not be slanted towards team A or B.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because a lot of times, like even my relationship with the UBC's like athletic department, they know that they know that I will put in the work. They know I'll do my preparation. I'll, look over the numbers, watch tape, see what some of the top players on the opposing team can do. Because obviously, come in every single game, talking to the coach, you know exactly what to expect, and you know what the foundation is. You kind of understand the culture of the team. Whereas the opposition, it's all coming down, like you said, the preparation, going, watching the film, because obviously the team that's visiting, especially in the environment of Canada West like sports, people teams are traveling, like they're flying in from Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Calgary, Alberta, all these like different universities and institutions. So it's a little bit, hard obviously to understand where those teams, like how they are in practice compared to game.
Right.
But you know, what is like the toughest component of the preparation? Because like you said, it's understanding the film, understanding the game, part of it, like knowing the game at the same time. But what's like really the one that it took you a while to really nail it down?
I think well, that's a great question. I think what took me a while to nail it down is just being relaxed in the moment and not taking things too hard. Like initially, I'd always be hard on myself, like what the bleep, like oh, I bleep this up, I bleep this whole thing up, and it would stick with me for a week, right, or two. But then as you get older in this business, you like bleep it. Like you mess up, you mess up. I tell people that I go, guys, you mess up, you mess up. You learn, you go, right? And that's what I've learned about myself is that you have to learn and go. And you always want there'll never be a perfect game called. Like if you think you call the perfect game, you're not in this business for the right reasons, right? There'll be bleep ups as you call a game, and you always think, okay, well, I need to prepare my mind for this moment here. It's the last shot of the game. I want to be perfect. You have to let the play breathe. It's not you that is the focus. It is the players on that cauldron, the arena, that's the focus. In that moment, if you watch like a professional, whether it's Fox, ESPN, whatever it is, you can see some of the broadcasters in that clutch moment. They allow the crowd to take over the ambiance. They allow it to breathe, and they don't jump in until maybe 5, 10, 12 seconds later, and then they'll go, "Hey, Team X with a big win over Team Y." So it's important to allow the play to breathe. Yes, you'll have your octaves going up for those exciting moments, but you have to be like a pitcher, right? You kind of have to go like straight, straight, straight. And when it's time to go up, you go up. When it's time to keep it straight, you keep it straight. And I think that's an art form that takes time to master, and also having a vocabulary that can match what you're trying to do. And that's the one thing I did, Ilya, during COVID when there was no sports to be had. I spent a lot of time watching English Premiership soccer because I'm a big fan of the sport. And so I had a notebook, and I have like now two notebooks where I would literally sit down, watch like hours of games, and I would jot down the broadcast of the analysts, and I would have keywords that they would use in that broadcast, and then I was translated from that onto a Excel sheet, and now I have a list of words that I'll look at. So in the mind that I'm at, okay, I'll be like, what could I use? Mastermind, mesmerizing, architects of their own downfall, like those type of moments that can kind of change. Like, hey, that's a pretty cool word that he used. So it's important to be a sponge to watch others. And now when I watch a game professionally, I'm very lucky to know a lot of guys who call high level sports at ESPN and Fox. I'm not watching the game per se. I'm watching more of the broadcast and how they call it. And I think that's where you have to kind of, deviate from being a sports fan to being what you want to be. And that's where I think for me, I've kind of grown in seeing how others call a game to better my skill sets. Say, hey, I like what he or she did. I'm going to take that and put it into my repertoire.
Wow, that's a very great way to put it. I've never actually heard anyone do something like that, analyzing a broadcast from that standpoint. And you know, there's one thing, like every commentator kind of has that like one kind of, you always want to say like a cliche phrase that they use every single broadcast,
Yeah,
or a word. Like obviously like Mike Breen with the bang,
yeah,
and like the likes of those things. Do you have one? I wonder. I've never really heard, like I've
yeah,
never
yeah.
really
No, no.
heard you call a game live, so it's like,
Yeah, yeah. No,
but
I have a few
just curious.
yeah, for basketball. Um, for a 3-point shot, I'll use splash,
Okay.
nylon, cash money, bullseye.
Okay.
I'll use that for basketball. For football, I'll kind of elevate the term sack
Mhm.
in that sense. Blistering ferocity, if it's a big play, like, from one end to the other end type of thing. It depends what sport it is I'm calling. But for basketball in particular, people are like, oh, you're the guy that says a splash or the nylon. I'm like, yeah, that's me for
Mhm.
sure. So there's a few words that I have that I will use, but I kind of grown that, right? It used to be splash and nylon, but now I use bullseye. That's a word that Kevin Harlan uses in his broadcast. Cash money, Brian Anderson from TNT uses that. I put that in my thing. But it's funny because CEBL, they'll do like little highlight packages of games. And so one time Montreal was playing Brampton last summer, and there was a play by Brampton where they hit a shot for three, and at the end it said cash money, and now is their hashtag cash money on their Instagram post. So it's pretty cool to see that, and it's neat, you know. But you want to have a palette of vocabulary words that's going to make it different, because you know what is, Ilya, people use the same clutch terms all the time, right? You want to have that distinction. Hey, you know what? He or she's going to have a cool saying to use for that moment if it's the right thing to say. And you know, you always search for words, but once you find that word, you roll with it and kind of let it grow and become your own brand, pretty much.
No, yeah, it's really, and it's also you get caught like you said, you have to separate yourself from the fan standpoint to a professional, right? So it's
Right.
like sometimes like even on the call you can't help but be a fan of the moment as well because you live in it. You're right there. You're like as close as anyone could possibly be to the game, especially for
Right.
those who are watching from homes. So it's like you ever have those points where like like you said you're gonna bleep up and those things will happen. You're not gonna have a perfect call, but is there a moment where you wish that you're like, dang it, this was a perfect opportunity and we screwed it up, and how'd you get over that?
Yeah, I mean, there's always moments like that, but then I go, okay, you know what? I kind of got it out, but didn't really. But you figure it out. You go, okay, you know what? It kind of got conveyed the message that I'm trying to say to the viewers out there. And you know,
Yeah.
it's like my biggest issue is I still do, but you know, articulating my words too quickly, and that's where I have to work on working tongue exercises. You know, even the shower. Funny enough, I'll say words, kind of get my voice ready to go, and I'll even chew gum before games to kind of get my jaw muscles warmed up, and that's key, right? Always chewing gum before a game to get your facial muscles warmed up, ready for a broadcast. But yeah, there's always gonna be that. I mean, for me, what I have to do with my broadcast teammates, you know, they might describe a play and they might use a word, and I'll jump on that word that they use. So, for example, I remember my first year doing the Alliance games. They were playing Fraser Valley, now the Vancouver Bandits, and there was a guy by the name of James Carnick who's a phenomenal player, played at Boston College for a few years. So anyway, Dwight Walton, my broadcast colleague, who's one of the greatest Olympian players for Canada and for
Legend.
Montreal, legend of
Legend.
Montreal and across Canada, well respected. He was literally describing, hey, there's contact right now between Alain Louis and so, right? But then Carney gets the ball and he dunked it on Alain Louis. So as Dwight said contact, and I jumped right back into the broadcast, I said contact by Karnik as he did it on Alain Louis, right? So I always try to pick up a word that my broadcast partner will say that I could kind of expand upon for that moment. And that's the key of developing that rhythm, that rapport that you have with your broadcast teammate, that it's gonna be a natural conversation that you're having on air. But more importantly, though, that you can have fun with it. And also, most importantly, though, to really be in that moment to enjoy it. And for that to happen, I mean, it shocked the arena for that split second, like, oh my God, he just got dunked on. But it was a moment that I can watch again and be like, you know what? It was fine for me. Maybe for others it wasn't, but it was cool to see that happen because you don't get that as often as you want to have a like a Moss moment type of thing during a sport of basketball or football, whatever it is at that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing that I've really never thought of. Like I would just being, mostly the kind of color analyst on the side of broadcasting, just understanding the game of basketball and kind of breaking it down for those who are watching from home. It's kind of different because the play by play, you have to let the person finish. You have to let them
Yeah,
finish calling that play, and then you jump in kind of breaking down, but you don't want to take it away too much because the next play is progressing, and
yeah.
that's another thing. Like I don't know, I'm sure you've watched it in the past, or maybe you do listen to the Old Man and the Three with JJ Redick. Great podcast, amazing podcast. I'm a huge fan, just like how they break down certain things in the broadcast. In the episode with My Brain, there's like a few things to take away from, just because him being the legendary NBA play-by-play guy and calling most of the important games, calling most of the finals, is just like soaking it up and like kind of taking those moments and snippets in. But going to the Alliance, right?
Yeah.
You have now called it for 2 years since their
They haven't
inauguration
fired me
into the
yet.
CBL. Hey, you know
Fired
what?
me yet.
You're doing something right. You're
I
doing
guess
something
so.
right
Yeah.
if they haven't, right?
Knock on wood.
But yeah, hey, you know what? Um, what's has been, I want to say, the process like, and what was the most rewarding component of calling those games as Montreal is now having the professional team in the CBL as well.
Yeah, in this journey that anyone that will pursue, it's look, broadcasting is cutthroat, man. The journalism game has started to shrink, unfortunately, because of how corporations now view journalism, right? It's controlling the narrative, right? And now you see more athletes controlling their storyline, which is rightfully cool to have that happen. But in my process of where I'm at for play by play, when I was doing when I'm doing some university in Asia, I always wonder will I get that opportunity to be professional, right? And I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus here, but I've been passed over for certain jobs, which kind of stung and burnt me in the sense that it drove me, right. Like I read Kobe Bryant's book that came out not too long ago, and in high school it was mostly on his high school, right, than his pro development, and it stung him when people would doubt his skill sets, right, and he would spend more time in the gym, and that's what he was, right. He was a gym rat practically, right, and that's what it meant for me is that I got to spend more time honing my craft. So when in the spring of 2021, when the CBL announced that they're coming to Montreal for 2022, I wrote down as a goal, and I told this to my broadcast colleague, Joe Alfieri, who's now working for the Alouettes, one of my close friends in the business. I said, Joe, I'm going to be the play-by-play voice for this team next year. And he goes, you better get it, man. Like he goes, I know you can do it. You better get it. So for that summer, I was trying to work it, and I was kind of going into a cul-de-sac at times, not getting the right connections to go with who I had to speak to. And then finally, January 2022, lucky enough, there's people in the basketball community who said, look, no, we're going to put your name up for this list. And then I was lucky enough to have a friendship with Joel Anthony, who I went to school with in CEGEP in the Quebec school system. I said, Joel, who could I talk to? And he says, okay, talk to Annie LaRouche, the president of the Alliance. So I sent Annie an email. I go, Annie, look, this is who I am. This is what I do. How can I apply for the broadcasting job? And at first she's like, I'll get back to you, whatever. I said, okay, cool. Maybe she does, maybe she doesn't. And then middle of March hits, nothing happens. April hits, she's, hey, I'm still got you there, da da da. And then by I think late April or May, she calls me up. She goes, hey, we want to offer you the job. And I was like, I go, really? Like, I go, it just blew my mind, right? Like, I go, wait a minute, like, you didn't want to hear my stuff, like. She goes, I don't want to hear your stuff because I know you're good because people have told me you're really good, and it blew my mind. And then she goes, hey, you can work with Dwight Walton. I'm like, okay, even better, right? And you work with Gavin Bear, who I worked with for McGill games. And I got the phone and I told my mom and I started crying. I go, she's like, cry for. I go, Mom, like, you put all this time and effort to get to the point you want to be in life, and you finally hit it, right? And it's like, holy bleep, you finally got a cool project to work with. So I never thought I'd be calling professional sports. And Dwight always reminds me, he goes, Mo, just remember. And I'm not one of those guys that go, hey, look at me. I'm not one of those type of guys. I'm very low key. I'm very like humble. I don't care about, I'm willing to help others and not get the credit for it. I rather have others get credit for it. So Dwight always reminds me, he goes, hey man, just remember, you're the play-by-play voice for the Montreal Alliance. You're repping the city of Montreal and Quebec, man. And I don't let that hit me. I go, yeah, cool, whatever. I kind of deflected, but I see what he says. But at the end of the day, I'm still grinding along because I have to act like I don't have it. I have to have that pebble in my shoe that there is that discomfort that I still have to work harder to get to the next level. So I never take it for granted, and I always appreciate to shake people's hands. And it's funny, people recognize Dwight more than they do for me, which is all good. So I shake their hands and they're like, who's this guy? I'm like, don't worry about me. I'm just a guy here calling games. That's all it is. I say words on TV. That's all it is.
Humility is a good quality. So there's
Yeah,
nothing wrong with just being yourself and being in a moment,
for sure.
regardless of who you're around, right, and who you're with in that particular situation. Now that you've been calling lots of basketball, and obviously there's tons of emerging talent in the NBA from Montreal. Obviously Ben Mathurin, Lou Dort, and hopefully more to come with Olivier Prosper as well in with Dallas. Um, Outside of those guys that are actually like NBA level, who is you would say the best player you've seen like CEGEP or like university level that you had the privilege to call a game?
I think right now I haven't called her game yet, but Kassan Prosper, who's at Notre Dame University, she's the next big one from the city of Montreal. And if she continues to elevate, develop, she could be in the WNBA in the next 3 4 years. She's Omax's sister, by the way, and I think she has a great chance. And Montreal, as I said before, like you've been here, you know the market. It took years for Montreal to gain the respect of Canada, and let alone the basketball world. But when you think about it from this perspective, Montreal North, which is a very tough neighborhood in the city, very impoverished, socioeconomic status not that pristine, and it's been neglected for many years, has now produced three NBA players in that borough. That's crazy to think that there's three guys from one of the most impoverished neighborhoods in Canada playing in the NBA, which is a testament to these guys for the hard work and what they did to get to the point of where they want to be in their lives, but also an inspiration for the next generation to say, I can be a Chris Boucher, I can be a Lou Dort or a Ben Mathurin, playing high level NCAA U sports, or maybe the NBA or European basketball in my career, or CBL for that matter. So I just think the city's now becoming a golden generation of talent that's being produced for high level basketball, and more kids now are going to US prep to get themselves looks for power fives or mid majors or major programs out there. So I think in this city, when it comes down to it, there's a lot of guys. I can't single one because there's so many guys I've called. And someone asked me to name my all-time Quebec team. I go, I can't, because it's such a wide base that it's so hard to say, yeah, I like this guy. But then I go, wait a minute, this guy's, it's just, it's open-ended, man. But, I'll say one thing, not to be biased, but my colleague Dwight Walton, he's definitely in that pantheon of names that I would put on my Mount Rushmore for sure.
Oh, there's if we start talking names, like the amount of players that went through JD is like
Yeah,
you
there's a
could
lot of
you could
guys, man.
easily, yeah, absolutely. And it's like it's hard, like you said, single out, like even like sometimes people like ask me, oh Ilya, who's like the hardest or like the toughest player or the smartest player you ever played against, and it's like, or with, and you have to go down the list. It's like there's so many players that like I look at and I was like, yo, these guys were ballers, like when I was either with them on teams or whether I had to play them in AU tournaments and whatnot. But it's, yeah, the list, like you said, like the talent in Montreal is there. I feel like you said again, um, we haven't been getting the respect that Montreal deserves in terms of what we have and what we produced over the years, with multiple like Seja programs, AAU programs that are part of the basketball development, and now us having that CBL team, also another huge factor of why NBA scouts should be paying attention to us perhaps as well. So yeah, it's really it's a tough one, like having so many great players come out, like Chris Boucher also, like you mentioned someone who come came out of very tough situation, going to JUCO, then going to Oregon, now playing in the NBA. um but yeah, it's incredible to see the growth and how far it has come, to be honest.
It really has, and it's a testament to a lot of the coaches that we don't know about that put in their free time. They're not being paid. Most of these guys are not being paid. They're doing it for the love of the sport, to be mentors, to be father figures for these young men and women who don't have fathers or moms, as included with the female coaches as well, to be mother figures as well. So it's a huge thing, and a lot of these guys put in a lot of time and effort. I remember a coach had asked me, "Hey, do you want to go down to Brooklyn?" I'm like, "Why?" We want to get this girl looks for NCAA teams, and we're doing a 3-day trip down to Brooklyn. I said I couldn't go, unfortunately, because I was busy. But this shows you how much they want to make sure these kids get academic opportunities that can probably do athletic scholarships for them, down the road. So I just think there's a lot of people across the board, not only just in Montreal, but across our basketball, football, all the varsity sports communities, of how much time they put into it for these young athletes to get a chance to enhance their value and create lifetime memories, once they're done playing that sport after their retired has-beens.
And another thing too is like, we talking about like they might not necessarily even make it to the big leagues and whatnot, but that could be a generational change, getting the opportunity to get, like you said, those scholarships, get the education, you know, maybe it could just be a generational setup moving forward for those kids and teenagers that look for ways to either continue with sports down the line or just even have an opportunity at something that they might not get in the city they're from.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's funny because a lot of these kids, people are like, oh, well, I don't want to leave my city. Well, you go, you get a scholarship offer, whether it's academic or athletics. You move to a different city. You go, I'll do my 4 years of out, right? But then next, you find the love of your life, and you find the dream job that you wanted, and you're laying roots in a different part of the world. Like, look at yourself, right? You've gone from Montreal to the East Coast, out to the West Coast, right? You don't know where your journey is going to take you, right? And I just think that you have to embrace the process and what it is. And if your goal is to play pro, well, what are you doing to play pro, right? Nick Saban, who just retired from Alabama, I just saw this quote this morning before coming on with you. A kid asked him, what do I have to do to be a really good basketball player? And Saban said, look, man, are you willing to put up 500 shots per day? Are you willing to do the extra time and effort in the gym when no one's watching to get to your goal? And if you're willing to do that, then you have to have a plan laid out. And I think people, oh, I don't want to do this. No, but you have to lay out a plan. If you know what your plan is from a goal perspective, just like with me with the Alliance to get this job, you'll hit it, right? And so I think it's important to really be open-minded and embrace what will come, good and bad. And if you do that, you'll get your dream job down the road, whether it's in 5 years or in 10 years. It will happen. You just gotta stick with it.
It's just a matter of time for a lot of these things, and for everyone. Like for me, when I was in Halifax last year, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here, to be honest. Cause I just decided to stay because I didn't want to go back to Montreal, and I wanted to, just see what it's like to just live there for a year. And then I'm like, you know what? Let me just shot in the dark and go out here, not regretting. So that's good. With 30 minutes out here on the 94 by 50 podcast with Moe Khan, I'm Ilya Kurbanov. We'll get right into the one last segment. It's going to be rapid fire questions for about a minute and a half. I just want to get a couple of things out of you. Nothing too crazy, so you won't have to worry about
All
anything.
good, man. No
But it would
worries.
be yeah, it would be some, food preferences, music, ball game,
Let me get some water first. So I have a.
Hey, take your time, my friend. Actually, while you're at it, let me
Yeah,
have mine too.
yeah. Being under the weather, you gotta keep hydrated over here, so it's all good.
Oh, that's the best way to get out
Of
of it.
course, of course.
Okay, let's get right into it.
Yeah.
Here we go. Favorite food that your mom makes. I know you talk a lot about it on social medias.
Oh man, Indian food. It's a good thing. She makes a spicy eggplant dish, which is really good.
Well, who is your favorite basketball player to ever watch,
NBA or
present
college
or past?
basketball?
NBA.
Um, okay, oh, man, that's a really tough question. Okay, so here I'll go two, right? So college basketball. There's a guy who played for UNC, Joseph Forte. He was phenomenal. Got drafted by the Celtics. Had a short career in the NBA, but college, that was it. In the NBA, it'd be Michael Jordan for me and how he was. But I was a big Scottie Pippen fan, being a Bulls fan. So Scottie Pippen was the guy that I really enjoyed. And, sorry, and you know
Favorite
what?
pump.
I'll go one more. Dennis Rodman when he was a Bull. There you go. Yeah,
That guy was the worm. The worm.
he was a beast.
Favorite song to pump up to before games or listening during the warm ups when you get ready to call the game?
Um, there's a guy now, Potter Piper, who's a UK hip hop artist. Potter Piper. That's POTTERPAYPER. He's got some really good stuff. I mean, I'm into a lot of hip hop, but UK hip hop is a market that has not been fully tapped into from our side of the pond. If you get to Potter Piper, he's really good.
Well, while we're at it, who's your favorite UK rap artist?
I think Potter Piper is up there. Fredo, I like a lot. He's really good. I know Central C gets a lot of
Lyrics.
love. Like Central C is more mainstream, but I think Fredo and Potter Piper are the two guys that are the best in the UK right now.
One last thing. If you could have had a dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be?
I'll probably Tupac Shakur. I'm just fascinated by his mindset. I think he personified like the Bleep You Society, right? Being the president of that. So I think his fascination, his play on words, like you talk about words, right, and kind of growing your vocabulary. He has that. He had that when he was alive, when he was still here, many years, many generations ago, for that matter.
Oh, he was not a huge Tupac listener myself, but obviously, some legendary songs, and just the way he twists the words, like you said, like into storytelling.
Yeah.
in the past. But yeah, Fredo is one of the rappers I actually like listening to as well. He's storytelling and like the way he just like kind of it just rhymes. It's not like it's nothing flashy. It'll just tell you how it is, and
Yeah.
it's pretty good music taste there, Mo.
Yeah, Pot Paper is really good. Like he's, yeah, I guess, like I said, no one knows who he is. Check him out. Like he's got a play on words that you're like, wow, this is really cool. Like he's really good. I think he's one of the best out there right now.
Definitely going to have to pay attention on that. But with that matter, we're going to wrap it up here at 94 by 50. Amelia Kurbanov, thank you for joining me again, Mo. I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy with Colin, 5 games, 6 games a week sometimes, but it's always a pleasure having a chat with you and, picking on your brain a little bit as, a young fella commentator who is trying to break into the broadcasting world the same way you once wanted to and now doing the most you can. I really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you again.
Hey, my pleasure, man. Thanks so much for having me on. Like I see you putting the grind and work in it, and it will pay off. And for those who are trying to get into this business, I know it's cutthroat. People come in wide eyed and leave kind of gloom and doom. But if you believe in yourself and what you want to be, you can definitely hit it. And I would say just keep on knocking doors, shaking hands, and for those who pass on you, I always tell people make in life, whether it's in this industry or not, make that person who passed on you to regret it because you want to be able to have that flourishing career, and you will have it if you stick to your goals of what you want to be.
Absolutely. Remember what Mo just said. From my end, I'd say work hard and make sure to always keep it simple. You'll have a wonderful day.